Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's always for me an honor and a privilege to speak at the conference about business opportunities and investments in Georgia. I have been now in the country for 5 years, and of course I have understood the potential that the country has, and I'm always ready to discuss about investment climate and business opportunity in the country. So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address the opening speech. So Georgia for EBRD is a very important country. We started working in Georgia in 1994. That's 25 years already that we have been investing in the country. We have invested more than $3 billion US in more than 200 projects. $3 billion US in the country, divided by the population, makes it one of the highest investment per capita in the whole EBRD region. Both in 2016 and 2017, we have new investment records in the country, more than 220, 250 million euros each year in about 15 different projects each year. And the pipeline that we have for this year is again very big and very wide, and we expect to have again a very good year. We invest in many different areas, including banking, including tourism, agriculture, health, and we do it sometimes directly and sometimes in cooperation with the local banks. Why Georgia? Well, as we well know, Georgia is one of the leading countries in terms of reform, in terms of market economy, in terms of investment climate, and in terms of democracy. And as we have seen over the last few days, is also a country that welcomes freedom of speech. No matter what views you have, you are free to go and to speak and to give your point of view. And your point of view is respected, and your point of view is welcome. All this in a peaceful way, which is of course very welcome, and this is the way real democracies are doing it. Georgia ranks very high in terms of different rankings, internationally recognized rankings around the world, including the Business Environment and Enterprise Performance Survey, BEPS, including the World Bank Doing Business, and including as well different credit agencies who have a positive outlook of the economy. Is still BB-, but if we continue, or if the country continues growing at 5% per year, in the next few years, I think it will be closer to investment grade. So Georgia has become really a model and probably an inspiration for a number of countries, both in the region, but also a bit in a wider area. At least when it comes to the EBRD 37 countries of operation, Georgia is clearly the leader in terms of reforms and in terms of democracy and in terms of a number of aspirations that were set when the EBRD was created 25, 27 years ago. Georgia is a country that has embraced the Western orientation, is a country that uses the word of Euro-Atlantic integration, and is a country that has signed an association agreement and a deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with the EU in 2014, and is a country that is ahead of the other two countries in terms of implementing and adopting the new rules. Also, as you well know, Georgia received last year a visa liberalization to travel to the Schengen region. All this is in recognition of the big efforts that the country has been doing. So, why Georgia is attractive for investment? Well, I will summarize it in a few points. The first one is that there is a very friendly, business-friendly government. And as you know, most of the members of the government are coming from the private sector, so they understand very well the importance of predictability, governance, transparency, and level playing field. Second, Georgia has a very strong and robust banking sector with very good capitalization, a very low level of non-performing loans, and an excellent supervision from the central bank. But like anything that worked well, it can be improved further. And in that respect, we very much welcome the new regulations adopted by the central bank in terms of responsible lending. This is very important to protect both the robustness of the banks as well as the borrowers. We need to make sure that the borrowers have the capacity to pay back their loans and that they know what kind of agreements they are entering into. And this is why we very much welcome these new responsible lending regulations. Georgia has a strategic geographic position, and it is in between the east and the west and between the north and the south. And this geographic position is clearly a point that gives attractiveness and a reason to come and to invest into Georgia. Georgia does not have traditional natural resources. There is no oil and gas, there are some mining products, but the wealth of natural resources of Georgia is really coming from the mountains, from the snow, from the 20,000 rivers that are moving all this water that is feeding hydropower plants that will convert into electricity both for domestic and for export possibilities. So we see very good possibilities and very good outlook in some sectors in Georgia. I would name a few. Tourism, for example, is a clear success and it has much more to be done. Light industry, and we see a number of SMEs that are growing around that have been supported by the program that was originally called Producing Georgia and then Enterprise Georgia, and many few others that were created, and they were created under the leadership of the former Deputy Minister of Economy, Ketty Bochorishvili, that is today here with us. So well done for that, because this was really the base of an excellent development of the SMEs. So Georgia is a country under construction. Georgia is a country where the foundations of a proper country, democracy and rule of law and country have been laid down, but there is much more to be done in terms of new institutions, in terms of more sophisticated benchmarks, and all this needs to be done with the support of the close partners of Georgia, with the EU, the international financial institutions, the World Bank, the EBRD, the EIB, the IMF, the ADB. We're all ready and stand ready to help Georgia in building this framework that is so much needed for this continued development. To name a few areas of challenges that need to be tackled, and all this is well known by the government, but I will name a few that in my view are extremely important. The first one is its human capital. This is a country where you have a lot of young people that are thirsty to be integrated into the new world, but where the skills and the education is probably not in line with the needs and not in line with the opportunities that the country has. So clearly a much more focused education, deeper into languages, into innovation, into computing and into the new technologies needs to be done. There is more to be done in terms of hospitality sector. Clearly Georgia is very attractive, but we need to build more roads, we need to build more facilities, we need to have better care of the tourists when they arrive here, so that we can offer them a much better menu of possibilities, whether it is to go to the mountains, whether it is to go to the vineyards, or to visit some historic places, or go to the beach by the Black Sea. But there is so much more to be done, both in terms of public sector, but also very much in terms of private sector. Clearly, today is very important to adopt the new technologies, and the creation of GITA, which is the Innovation Center, is very important, and the country needs to continue fostering the development into those new technologies that will be able to bring products of high value to the country and for Georgia to be inserted into a new modern economy. Georgia benefits from a very good agricultural land and water and weather, but the yields and the productivity of the land is not good enough. Georgia needs to focus into producing high value products, probably on the greenhouses probably under adopting new technologies, but it needs to take much better advantage of its very good land rather than to use the land for common products that have very little value added. The world of the SMEs is, again, a world that needs to be continuously supported. A lot has been done, both in terms of Enterprise Georgia, but also in terms of the DCFTA program of EBRD. But there is much more to be done to help those entrepreneurs to develop, to create a product, and to be successful, and more importantly, to create employment, which is really what Georgia needs. Georgia needs to continue developing its infrastructure. If Georgia wants to be inserted as a country where it wants to be the way through the east and the west, of the north and the south, it needs to have much better roads, it needs to have much better airports, ports, and railways, so that it can really convert this location potential into a reality. The banking sector is well developed, but we need to work much more into developing a more sophisticated local capital and local currency markets. We need to continue developing non-banking financial institutions, leasing, factoring, insurance. All these are areas of huge potential for the country. In terms of energy, as I mentioned, this is a country that has huge potential in terms of green energy, hydropower plants, but it also needs to focus into a better use of the energy it has. The country needs to adopt soon the Energy Efficiency Action Plan. It needs to bring better regulation to the industry, to the residential, to building materials, to make sure that the energy that the country has is better used and the yields are more in line with its European partners. And finally, the judiciary sector requires some reform. We need to make sure that the commercial disputes are properly handled in a transparent way, and EBRD is very committed through the Investors Council into creating a new body under the High Council of Justice that will be dealing with all the commercial cases in a much more systematic and transparent basis. So, the EBRD over these last 20 years, 25 years, and particularly over the last few years has been a key partner with Georgia, and it has been really very much focused into continue lending and supporting an economic activity, but very much also focusing into policy dialogue. We have been working in so many areas to develop institutions. We have been working in creating better capital markets. The EBRD has been at the forefront of decreasing the dollarization of the banking sector when we issued our bonds. We have now issued 5 times our bonds. We helped the digital broadcasting. We helped to create the new PPP law that has been adopted by the Parliament last week or the week before. We have been closely working with the Ministry of Energy at the time and Ministry of Economy in terms of developing the Energy Efficiency Action Plan. We are now engaging into developing a proper policy for mining. We are engaging to the leasing and factoring areas. And more recently, as innovative as it is, we are working also with the Ministry of Justice into adopting blockchain technology for the rights of property of Georgia. So we very much welcome the commitment of Georgia, the commitment of the authorities. The EBRD has publicly and privately shown its support to Georgia as a leading country, and we will continue doing that to foster the development and the integration with more Western economy. So, with this in mind, I just can wish you very successful meetings, and again, thank you for the opportunity.